Welcome back to the deep dive. We love digging into source material to find those key insights, those aha moments for you.
And today, we're doing just that. We heard you, and we're diving deep, question by question, into session 7 of the Law of One.
Yeah, this one's packed. We'll be looking at the Confederation of Planets, what service means to them, the Council of Saturn.
UFO contacts, the Orion group. It's a lot, but really fascinating stuff.
Our goal to really pull out the nuggets, the core ideas from this session and see how they connect.
Absolutely. Session 7 really opens up how these higher-level interactions work, all based on the Law of One, but with, more specific applications. Shall we jump in?
Let's do it. So question 7.1, the questioner asks, basically, what kind of service does the Confederation provide? What are the options?
The Ra narrows the focus right away. It's about the service they offer to those who call them.
Okay, and the answer is, well, it's a bit of a mouthful. Ra calls it equivalent to the square of the distortion need of that calling.
Right, the need squared.
Yeah.
Then it's divided by or integrated with the basic law of one and its distortion, indicating the free will of those who are not aware of the unity of creation.
Okay, so there's the need or the intensity of the call amplified somehow.
That squaring suggests amplification, yeah.
But it's balanced against the law of one, specifically respecting the free will of people on Earth who might not, consciously get the whole unity concept yet.
Precisely. It's this immediate tension, or maybe balance is a better word, between the desire to help, the intensity of the call, and this absolute respect for free will, a core principle.
Which flows right into the next question, 7.2. The questioner suggests, well, maybe the reason open contact is so tricky is because Earth's awareness of unity is all over the place. It's mixed.
And Rest confirms that, yes.
Yeah.
They talk about needing to integrate all parts of Earth's social memory complex, our collective consciousness, which describes as being in an illusory disintegration form.
Kind of scattered, fragmented, our collective state right now.
Exactly. It implies our level of collective understanding directly impacts the kind of interaction that's possible or appropriate according to the law of service.
Ra also says the law of service squares the desires of those who call. That's squaring again. And that this allows their beingness here.
It really highlights the power of focused intention, doesn't it? Even if it's not the majority calling, that square desire creates the energetic potential for them to be present, to interact in some way.
But it's crucial to note, Ra says the limitation isn't because they don't want to help more openly.
No, not at all. It's described as a maximal consideration of what is possible within the law. It's about wisdom and adherence to universal principle, not reluctance.
Okay, so this squaring, question 7.3, tries to nail it down. Is it just like multiplying the need by the number of people calling?
No. Ra corrects that idea. It's not simple multiplication. It's described as sequential 1, 2, 3, 4, each squared by the next number.
Sequential, so it compounds, like interest on intention.
Sort of, yeah. It's a progressive amplification. Each call, maybe aligned with the others, builds on the last one exponentially. It creates a much stronger resonance than simple addition.
Makes the quality of the call seem really important, not just the quantity.
Exactly. Focused, unified intention has this compounding power.
So 7.4 gives an example. If just 10 entities called, how's that calculated?
Ra says they'd square 1 10 sequential times, raising the number to the 10th square.
And the result, that's 7.5. Ra pauses, then gives an approximate number. 1,012.
1,012. But then comes a really key piece of information. Ra mentions a statistical loss.
Why?
Because the callers aren't always totally unified in their calling. Their intentions might be slightly different or wavering.
So it's not just the number calling or even the sequence, but the coherence of the call. How unified is that desire?
Precisely. Fragmented intentions, even from many, weaken the overall signal, you could say. Unified focus is incredibly powerful.
Which makes you wonder, how many are calling now? That's 7.6.
Ra gives simplified figures, personally called by about 352,000.
Okay.
And the Confederation as a whole, called by around 632 million mind-body-spirit complexes on Earth.
Wow, 632 million. Those are huge numbers, even simplified.
Massive numbers.
So the obvious next question, 7.7, what happens when you apply the loft squares to that?
And Ra's answer is quite striking. They say the resulting number is approximately meaningless in the finite sense. Just too many digits to really grasp.
But it's not meaningless in its effect.
Not at all. Ra says it constitutes a great calling, a call felt throughout creation, as if our own entities were distorted towards a great and overwhelming sorrow. It demands our service.
That's incredibly powerful imagery, our collective longing and pain echoing through the cosmos, creating this pull for service.
It really underscores that interconnectedness. We're not isolated. Our collective state resonates.
So does this massive call mean open contact is imminent? Question 7.8 asks about the threshold. How many need to call?
But Rob pivots here. It's not primarily about the number of callers.
Oh, what is it about then?
It's about achieving a consensus among an entire societal memory complex. That's humanity, which has become aware of the infinite consciousness of all things.
So it's a consciousness shift, not just asking for help, but a collective realization of unity.
Exactly. It's a fundamental shift in awareness across the whole society that opens that door. Rod does mention the Council of Saturn, though.
Right, they approve specific aid projects that might involve, say, physical presence.
Yes, but those are initiated by groups already oriented to service, identifying a need, and then the council considers it within the framework of the law.
Okay, let's talk about this council. Question 7.9 asks, who are they? How do they work?
Ra explains it's made up of representatives from the Confederation, plus some beings from the inner planes who have responsibility for Earth's third density.
Names aren't important, Ra says.
No, it's about their vibration, their energetic signature. Vibratory sound complexes is the term used. The main working group, the Session Council, has 9 members.
9, and they're in constant session.
Apparently so, with a balancing process to keep the group harmonious. And there are 24 others, the Guardians, who offer backup or further wisdom.
How do they function? Is it like a committee meeting?
More like telepathic unity. They harmonize their perspectives. Ra calls them distortions to align with the law of one. Their job includes admitting groups to the Confederation, deciding on aid requests.
Based on the call, the law, and how much resistance there might be.
Right. And resolving internal questions. They can consult the 24 Guardians if they need a broader consensus or judgment.
It sounds very considered, deliberate.
Highly so, focused on wisdom and adherence to universal law.
Then 7.7 connects this to the Council of 9 from the book Yuri.
Yes, Ra confirms that the information received by Mark Prober and Henry Puharich was a semi-undistorted form of this same council. It highlights how channeling can vary in clarity.
Different receivers, different filters, potentially?
Exactly. The core truth might be there, but the transmission isn't always perfect.
Okay, then 7.11. The questioner tries to link UFO contact with, like, an advertising campaign for awakening, suggesting maybe the council lifted the quarantine.
And Ra steps in to untangle that, very clearly. No, the Council of Saturn did not lift the quarantine in that period.
So what were the sightings?
Ra says some landings are actually our own Earth craft. Others are the Orion group.
The Orion group enters the picture.
Yes. But Ra does say permission was granted for Confederation members to appear in thought form to receptive individuals.
Subtle contact.
Very subtle. And significantly, after the first atomic bomb. Then permission was given for Confederation beings to minister in ways that create mystery.
Why mystery?
To make people aware of infinite possibility. To sort of crack open the consensus reality as a first step towards understanding the law of one. Not proof, but wonder.
That's a critical distinction, not forcing belief, but inviting curiosity. And respecting free will.
Always respecting free will.
Yeah.
The Orion group mention is important, though.
Right. Question 7.14 asks for more on their UFO contacts. What's their goal?
Ra uses the example of Adolf Hitler to illustrate the Orion philosophy. It's about unifying through control, establishing an elite.
And enslaving everyone else. Service to self, basically building an empire.
Exactly. But Ra also points out their netness. This path creates random energy because of the core concept of separation. They have internal conflicts, disharmony.
Because they're fundamentally fighting the unity of creation.
In essence, yes.
Yeah.
Their focus on power over creates friction and instability within their own structure. It's a stark contrast to the Confederation's service to others approach, which fosters harmony.
So what about their development? Question 7.15 asks about their density levels.
It's a mix, similar to the Confederation.
Yep.
Fewer in third and sixth density, more in fourth and fifth.
But their numbers are much smaller, only about a tenth of the Confederation.
Yes, Ra attributes this to spiritual entropy. Their path of separation leads to a constant tendency towards disintegration of their own collective groups.
That's fascinating. But here's a key point Ra makes. Their power isn't less.
Right. The fundamental power of the law of one, the energy of creation, is available to any group striving together, regardless of their orientation, service to others, or service to self.
But the service to self path makes using that power much harder.
It creates constant difficulty, weakens their collective energy, because the very act of separation and control works against the flow of unity.
But they still learn, they still progress.
Yes. Ryle emphasizes that the illusion of space-time allows for all these choices, all these paths. Everyone learns, everyone evolves, just maybe at different rates or through different kinds of experiences.
Even through separation, there's learning happening.
According to Ra, yes,
Yeah.
all paths are ultimately paths of the creator exploring itself.
Okay, 7.16 asks about the density before a fifth density Orion group. Where did they come from?
Simple sequential progression. A fifth-density Orion group is made up of beings harvested from fourth-density Orion groups. The melding creates infinite variations, just like on the positive path.
The mechanics of progression seem similar, even if the philosophy is opposite.
The underlying mechanics of density transition, yes.
Which leads to the big question in 7.1 Inton. The questioner is really trying to grasp how a service-to-self group can progress, especially from third density, R density, to fourth. How do they make the hardest?
And Rain indicates this is the last long answer for the session. They remind the questioner that pathways to intelligent infinity exist at all density levels, even for those not focused on serving others.
So how does it work for them?
Harvest happens when a being can perceive and enjoy or resonate with the light and love of the next density. That's the basic requirement.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. By free will, if someone finds that light, that connection, without a desire to serve others, they still have the right to use that connection for whatever purpose they choose.
Including service-to-self purposes.
Yes. Rain even mentions there are specific study systems, difficult ones, for seekers of separation to gain access to these gateways. The path is just as demanding, in its own way, as the path of seeking knowledge to serve others.
Wow. So there's a negative path of initiation, just as challenging as the positive one.
Apparently so. And Ra drops this mind bender. The distortion lies in thinking service to self and service to others are fundamentally different. From the ultimate viewpoint of the law of one, if the core unity is grasped, they're two facets of the same exploration.
That takes some sitting with. The idea that these polar opposites are somehow reconciled within the one.
It definitely challenges our usual way of thinking about good and evil, or positive and negative paths. It suggests a much larger, more encompassing perspective where all experience serves the creator's self-knowledge.
A truly profound point to end the main Q&A on.
Absolutely.
The session then wraps up quickly. 7.18 is just checking on the instrument's comfort.
Ra says minor adjustments are okay, but the energy is being used well, minimal distortion.
And in 7.1 Hank, the questioner decides not to ask more, wanting to conserve the instrument's energy, and says they're starting to grasp the progression idea, and expresses thanks.
A respectful end to a very dense session.
So let's recap the big takeaways here. We saw how Confederation service works, driven by the call, amplified by that squaring principle, but always, always balanced by free will.
And the huge importance of unifying intention in making that call effective. We got a glimpse into the Council of Saturn, its structure, its role in weighing aid and upholding cosmic law.
We touched on the nuances of UFO contact, not always what it seems, with different players like the Orion group involved, and the Confederation using subtle means like fostering mystery to nudge awareness.
And centrally, this exploration of the two primary paths, service to others, Confederation, and service to self, Orion, how both draw on the law of one, how both involve learning and progression, even if the STS path has inherent spiritual entropy.
The really key takeaway for me is that profound idea from 7.17 that the law of one is available to everyone, regardless of their path. Learning happens through all choices.
And that seeming paradox, service to self and service to others being ultimately two sides of the same coin within the one infinite creator, different ways the creator explores itself.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. How does knowing that all paths, even those rooted in separation, are ultimately paths of learning within the one? How does that shift your view of all the different intentions and actions we see playing out in our world?
Does this law of wisdom, this understanding of ultimate unity, encompassing even apparent division, change how you perceive service, purpose, and the journey we're all on? Something to reflect on.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Namaste.
I am you and you are me.